So we are here today. It's kind of to begin to, as members of the coalition, to kind of see and to begin to talk together about the proposed Taking Us to the Streets campaign. But before we begin, I actually wanted to show a little, it's a very brief video that was created. And it's new. I mean, this wasn't planned, but once I saw it, I thought it would be nice to share. It was created by a number of our members, and it was in response. Some of you may have seen this, but there was a video that actually one of our members, Katie Norris, sent me. That I guess it was on Instagram, but it was a doctor from an ER doctor in Texas who created a video where basically it was this very kind of actually creepy video. Yes. Where he very earnestly talks to the camera and says, you know, there really are zombies out there. And then goes on to talk about people living with dementia. Yeah. And it's just a mean-spirited, I mean, like on one hand, my honest human reaction was what a mean-spirited, cruel thing to do. But on another level, like I have no idea why he decides to do this. But on the other hand, I have learned not to be shocked by people's capacities to be cruel, especially given the dominant and still overriding ways that dementia is seen. But at any rate, what I enjoyed was the response video that some of our members created. So that's what I want to share. So Dan, if we could bring that up.
Here we go. Let me know if you don't hear sound.
Living with dementia feel about being called a zombie?
I personally don't feel that way.
We are not zombies.
This is the book where I make notes about the thousands of meaningful moments I've spent with people living with dementia at all stages. There's not a single zombie in here.
Last I checked, zombies don't dance, zombies don't make funny faces, zombies don't laugh. My mom's not a zombie, she's a human being.
Using the word zombie as a metaphor for people living with dementia results in discrimination, disregard, and neglect of those individuals. I think we can do better.
I kept a journal while taking care of my mom with Alzheimer's. Here's one of her quotes. Talk to me like you used to.
Not knowing our name or recognizing our face does not mean that our loved one doesn't know who we are anymore.
Emotional connection is preserved during dementia.
And just as you wouldn't categorize everyone from one profession or everyone from one background under the same label, the same goes for dementia. Everyone is different.
We aren't saying that dementia isn't hard to navigate, but we are saying that people living with dementia are not the problem. A society that treats them like zombies is.
In the emergency department, we see people at their worst, and it's hard sometimes for us to remember that person may have a pretty decent quality of life. They may have quality of life that they would judge to be good.
Another problem with this zombie language is that it can keep caregivers stuck in their hopelessness and helplessness, and it can prevent them from knowing that in addition to grief, there can also be joy in dementia.
How do you, as somebody living with dementia, feel?
Okay, we can stop. So anyway, I just thought, you know, it was just and again, I wanted to show it for many reasons, but I thought it was just I don't know, one showing of just a creative, lovely human way that we can keep bringing this message out to an ever broader audience. And I also want to, again, all of you have been doing wonderful things. So if you want to mention them, please do. In my saying what I'm about to say, I'm not trying to, I just happen to know of some things, but I also wanted to thank and give a shout out to Robin Gerton and Nancy Nelson, who created a workshop, Playing with Dementia, that they presented for an international audience this past Friday. We were invited by the Global Play Brigade. And I know because unfortunately I wasn't able to attend, but I've seen it and it's just lovely, 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 creative, fun. And the impact on people was palpable. So again, just another way we can reach more and more people who, may or may not immediately be impacted by dementia, but want to and can be part of the conversation and creating something new. And that's really, if there was a simple way to describe how we're thinking about the Taking Us to the Streets campaign, it's that can we find simple, creative, fun, engaging ways to bring, if you will, what we're doing to an ever-growing, group of people around the world, because there's millions of people who are impacted, and yet, for the most part, they're unengaged. And, as I shared in the last meeting we had, one of the last gatherings, I really do believe that if we want to make the kind of transformational change that we're talking about, whatever that looks like, we have to increasingly win the hearts and minds of the broadest population possible. So that's really what this is about. There's no, I was thinking today, we probably have as many questions as we do answers. So please, and am I about to share what I'm about to share? Do not relate to this as set in stone. It's not as if we've laid this all out and now it's just a report back to all of you. Clearly, we're going to have to create it and even see if this is something we want to create. I don't make assumptions. I'm thrilled that all of you showed up. I assume that's some indicator of interest, but we still have to create what it is we can do. So I don't know if you noticed that initially I started calling this taking it to the streets, but I realized, what's it called when you reduce something to its initials? What's that called then?
Acronym?
Acronym, okay. But the acronym for taking it to the streets is awful. So you all can figure it out, but I decided it wasn't probably, it doesn't do it any good for TITS to be our leading acronym. Now, could be. On the other hand, we all decided, since we all have a sense of humor, maybe that should be our, however. So that wasn't the main reason, but it did strike me the more I wrote it that probably want to stay away from that. But also, I thought it was probably more apt to say taking us to the streets, because in a way, all of us need to be out there, and we're the ones who, it just represents all the us's in the world who, whether we're formally involved with this conversation, this community, whatever, it just seemed like a much more inclusive and actually more accurate way of talking. Now, we could also call it something else entirely. It started out as something that we kind of made up, but it's growing on me. But if we do use taking anything to the streets, it'll be us. So what I thought it would be helpful to do today is I'm going to lay out 4 things that I think about this overall activity. And then I thought that possibly, and then, leave plenty of room for questions, comments, whatever. But then I thought maybe it might be good to then break into smaller groups just to be able to begin to kind of chat, brainstorm, et cetera, that rather than do it in one large body. And we have about 23 people. So figure 4 rooms of 5, maybe then, and any extras could go into one of those rooms, that's fine. But to the extent that, and in chatting and thinking more about, and chatting with some of you, this hasn't been, fortunately, it's not been going on in my head exclusively, is that we're, the 4 things that I think might characterize this activity is that it's facing the community, and if you will, talking to strangers. That's kind of the spirit in which we're doing this. That it be as collaborative, as creative, and as fun, and inviting and inclusive as possible. And in that sense, and again, I want to be careful because I am not knocking educational efforts, but in this regard, I don't view this as, quote, an educational experience. Now, I think people will come away from it having learned something. I have no doubt about that. But we're not trying to spend hours with people telling them everything there is to know about dementia. That's not this is really to create community, to create a spirit, to involve them in something that, yes, there is, and one of our tasks is to create all the messaging. That hasn't been done yet. But that it's more, they be part of creating something big, small, whatever it is. And then kind of leave with some sense of an experience of or community of people who simply doesn't view and inactivity doesn't relate to dementia as a tragedy narrative. And we're all incredibly creative people. So I have no doubts that we can come up with some wonderful things, but also to do it in a way that's consistent with the work you're already doing. I mean, I don't remember who I was talking to yesterday, but it was somebody who was basically saying, the point of this isn't to add one more check mark thing to your to-do list, please. Again, I know it's stupid to say because it goes without saying, we all have a lot on our plates. So hopefully we can support each other to come up with ways that actually would advance your projects or advance your community efforts or advance your whatever it is you're involved with. But it is something that is also, a new kind of thing. So I don't want to also pretend like this isn't going to take creative energy. And then, and again, as I said, as inclusive and interactive conversational as possible, to just allow people to have conversations. Other than that, I think it's wide open to what we can do together. And for the most part, I thought that one of the things that we could start doing in these conversations is start generating some possibilities of the kinds of things that might be possible, because it's often hard, or it's sometimes hard for people to come up with things. So that's, and including people beginning to grapple what you may or may not want to do. Our thinking is that we will do, now this is a question, in conversations with various members and others. I mean, it's been proposed that, and I think I've said this in the emails, that we launch a week-long thing in the summer. And September probably being the month, for a host of reasons, including that since we would like at least some element of this to be outside, at some point you can't keep going outside much past September, maybe early October. So, but that might be the launch for a continuing effort. I don't foresee this as, okay, everything will happen in 1 week. However, it's September. And I want to, so amongst other things on the agenda is that realistic? I personally think it would be good if we did something this year. However, I'm really not saying that like we've got to do something this year. However, and in my mind, I mean, I think some of us probably can. It could be we relate to that period as kind of a pilot period. And there's a certain number of us who can commit to doing something, and we kind of treat it as a pilot. And that's what and that will then inform a kind of continued rollout around the world. But those are some of the things we can play with. I'm really just trying to introduce all the things that are kind of, have come up. But that is one big one, is whether or not September makes sense as something to shoot for. So why don't I really do apologize. Oh God, I don't feel good. So maybe it'd be helpful, actually, maybe only helpful to me, but maybe it would be helpful to hear questions, just because I have no doubt I'm forgetting something that it's important to say, but at this point, it also would just be helpful if others to hear back from you, even if it's questions or just anything that you think have been thinking about, or isn't clear, or you have questions on anything. Let's open it up now, and then we can break out.
I wonder if it would be helpful to identify the public spaces where this could happen. In terms of, if we do create sort of and I don't know if this is the right term, but sort of a kit for folks who might want to take us to the streets, identifying where those public spaces are. So are they at metro parks? Are they at libraries? Are they at museums? Are they, where are, where are the places that you could look to for not only space, but collaborative partners to make this happen in September?
Yeah, good. Let's add that to our, yes. And I think the collaborative partners piece is particularly important, especially partnering with cultural groups and people who can bring in a lot of creative energy. Sam.
My name's Sam Simon. I live in McLean, Virginia. I know a number of you know me. I have early stage Alzheimer's with mild cognitive impairment. And I was a Ralph Nader lawyer early in my career, so I do know a little bit about organizing. But I became an artist and a playwright, and I'm going to preview this Monday for their comment feedback. And I know that some of you saw I'm writing a play called Dementia Man, but I do want to address your topics because my motivation is your motivation, Mary. That the tragedy narrative and the diminution of people with this disease is frightening and it's horrible and it needs to change. I have my own views on it, so I love that you're getting large groups of experts, and I am not an expert. I'm just wandering in the desert, so to speak, are necessary. I do have my first and biggest question. To do this well and focus needs staff and budget, and I don't know where that necessarily comes from, and if that doesn't, I'm be a big voice and advocate to include art of all sorts in the argument, if you will. Part of my later career was to work in social justice, and they adapted art that people in a sense know what to do. They need to be moved to do it and think differently in art writ large, whether it's music, theater, whatever, can be an important part. So that's something I'm interested in. And I will just stop speaking by saying, I think we have to change the word. I am convinced that dementia as a word has to leave the vocabulary. And that's going to be in my show, that'll be in my work. And I was glad to learn that the medical definitions have changed so that it is neurocognitive disability and neurocognitive disease. And just as we need something better than TITS, there's probably got to be a better shorthand for neurocognitive disease, but certainly we've got to move away from, part of our agenda has got to be to move away from that horrible word. That's my own view, but and thank you for having me here.
Sure, welcome. Thank you, Sam. Others? All right. So I assume this means there are no pressing questions.
Terry?
Terry, sorry. Terry, yes.
Okay. It's not necessarily a question, but I love how you mentioned about the acronyms because that is so much fun. And you meet people along the way. And even I don't remember that you guys may go back this far because I have bits in time that I go back and forth. And let me explain. I do have Alzheimer's. And but the point that I'm making is with the acronyms, out of all of the things that we lose along the way, what I seem to do easily is acronyms. And so when you're jumping rope as a kid, I have flashes like that, and how we can do that maybe, where you have a jump rope, where you do things that we did as a kid. That's really a fun thing to do. Hula hooping, skating, and the acronyms like WILL, Like we always want to have a will or ill, like rather than always feeling like you ill, but always flip it to the positive side of living with the disease is I love to laugh. I love, it's just so many things with just the acronym ILL, ILL. I'm going to stop here and let someone else talk.
Thank you. You're actually in the workshop that Robin and Nancy led. They created this wonderful song, I guess, they kind of utilize the kind of phrases that people living with dementia hear, like you don't look like you live. And it was just a wonderfully playful and very creative way to handle it. So I was thinking about that, Terry. You're right. It's kind of carrying this lightly as we go forward and kind of having some fun and playfulness with it. All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we break into small groups for about 25 minutes? No, yeah, 25 minutes. And why don't we focus on this, because based on the questions. One is just I think, to kind of play around with possible ideas. And the answer to, in one way, the answer to your question, Barbara, of the public spaces is going to be up to the sponsoring. You know what I mean? Like in your case, the libraries make total sense, or to utilize what it is that libraries have access to, others obviously. But on the other hand, I think it would be good to kind of just get a sense of, and I think it's in line with beginning to kind of brainstorm and play around with possible ideas and activities and ways to do this, and who possible partners would be. And then kind of to play around with the timing question and again, it's less, you don't have to agree on something, but a consensus, if you will, on if the fall makes sense and kind of but just to really kind of talk amongst yourselves about this, all that we're saying. And to speak to what Sam was saying, I think the relationship between the coalition and the activities, I mean, we will commit to, and again, we'll call upon you, some of you, to help us develop this, but we will create kind of materials for it of some kind, like that kind of give it in a way the umbrella that kind of established that this is a Reimagining Dementia Coalition event, who we are, what this is about, et cetera. So, and we can, there's work to be done on figuring out what all of it is. And we both have some money bank to invest in it, and we will work to raise more. That said, a lot of the activity is going to be local. And I want to be absolutely upfront about that. Again, that's why I think it should be and need be as coalitional as possible. I think a lot of things can happen that won't cost a lot of money. I'm not looking for people to, do something they can't do. But it's really kind of, but there will be that interplay between, if you will, the coalition as a whole and the kind of coordinated effort, and then what everyone is doing locally. We'll do things like we will have I've begun speaking to some of the PR people in our coalition. We'll have a PR effort around it, social media, things like that. There will be, so there's certain kinds of things that, again, could happen locally. I think local press is probably as likely to pick up on things like this but we will do a coalition-led social media effort. We will, begin to develop a page on our website of activities and try to make it as festive and as fun as, hey, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. So, and on the other hand, if in the course of the conversation there are other questions, other ideas, please bring them all up. Now's the time to have all the questions on the table. It would be helpful, since, again, I don't think we can record small groups. If somebody could take some simple notes and share with us either in writing later or when we come back together. All right, so why don't we, any other things before we break up? All right, so Dan, why don't we bring, and let's set it for about 25 minutes.
And
I
away
think
we
that
go.
means it's only 5 minutes at the end, Mary. I think that's too short.
Well, this is going to, these were 75 minutes. Hopefully, if you can stay. I realize some people only have lunch hours, but I set it for 75 because, and I knew that we weren't, and we're still not going to be able to get to everything, but we will have a little bit of time. So hopefully the person reporting back is somebody who does not have to leave at, the top of the hour. So let's just try to leave it at that. And if not, again, I would just ask that groups report back to us via email or whatever. Explain we or who we, sorry, who's, I'm sorry, Sam, I don't know what you mean. Who's the we or who
You
we
keep
is?
saying we,
Yeah.
the phrase, and you know who that means, and I'm not positive.
Oh, I mean, everybody on this.
No, but
panel
I
right now.
thought you're referring to the organizer now of this meeting, you or your, I'm blanking on the name of your organization, but who?
The Reimagining Dementia Close. The Reimagining Dementia Close, sorry, Coalition is the broader we. That's who the big we is. The we's I'm talking to right now are the members on this call. All righty, I'll see you all in about 25 minutes. All right. Doesn't matter who starts, just why don't you share some of what you all spoke about with each other?
I can start, Mary. I was in a group with Sam, and one thing that I really took from him and his message was that it'd be really great, no matter what we decide on doing, is having a long-term plan in terms of how this fits into our broader vision. And so not just a one-off activity, but an activity with a real plan for how we leverage that activity for doing the culture change work that we want to do. And so I love that idea, and it'd be nice if we could keep that in mind going forward in terms of not only planning the event, but also planning how can we leverage whatever we do in the future.
Great.
I'm gonna jump on your coattails, Sherry. I love that. And I will follow up with the coalition with a full, really rich list. But what we spent our time on was making our wish list of collaborative partners. And so I was in a room with Ed and Kate and Barbara and Nancy, and for a little while, Dr. Cheryl. And each of these people brings together many meaningful connections. So I hear what you're saying, Sherry, so that this event becomes self-sustaining. The spotlight goes on and on. We, by creating this event, we strengthen our relationships with our collaborative partners.
Yeah, we spoke about partnerships too, and the importance of thinking about partners we wouldn't traditionally go to. So there's the traditional go-tos, but oh dear, I'm forgetting who it was now that mentioned it. Lynn, was it Lynn? I think you mentioned the idea of having partners who would be, different than what we might go with before, like police, spiritual churches in the community, just different types of partnerships where we would traditionally go and start with. And I think they need to be included, Alzheimer chapters, perhaps in communities that we know are doing good work. Not all of them are. But yeah, so
Right.
I think that
Now, what you're saying is helpful because in some ways, actually, not only it sounds like making sure this continues and we leverage it, but in some ways, I mean, a lot of conversations have been taking place already. So in some ways, taking us to the streets has started because I think in beginning to reach out to possible partners and all that, I mean, in a way, that's starting to bring them into, and it already impacts the conversation. So it's helpful what you're saying. Others?
I'll tell you an interesting partner you may not think of, and that is professional football teams. We have connection with the Green Bay Packers and get some funding from their foundation. I don't know whether other football teams have foundations for local nonprofits, but certainly all the information that's come out about CTE has gotten the attention of football. So that could be a partner.
Oh, that's interesting. That's great. Yeah. We'll have to put aside our fandom. Go Packers. Others, because I don't know who was in which group. So it'd be helpful if every group could at least say something, but I don't know who was in them. So you will have to self-identify. Nayla, sorry.
Yeah, I'll speak a little for our group and then you can fill in as well. Mostly we talked about what we want it to look like in terms of really having fun, moving together. We had talked before we went into the breakout rooms about really incorporating the arts. So we had talked about working with our local art communities, whether it be in dance or music or circus, all of it, to organize some kind of parade or pop-ups around the city. Maybe we would plan to have little pop-ups, and we already have so much material within the Reimagining Dementia Network. So if we took some of the material that's already been created, we would have a lot to start with. And then, just having people come along this route and dance with us and move with us. So that was really the focus, on having fun together, on involving the arts communities and involving young people. So students, even high school students, maybe teaching them a song. But then we also talked about there being, wanting to have something we move forward with. So having a call to action, and we talked about maybe having a prompt that we send out beforehand to community members. So like, how would you like dementia to be reimagined? And then using that prompt, collecting all of the answers and using those prompts to create little pop-ups or little art pieces that could then be built on the day of or afterwards as well. Does anyone from my group want to? I sent the notes in the chat.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you. Pia?
So we were group, I think it was group number 3, Terry and Kelsey and Margaret and Sion was in our group as well. I love all the ideas that have been shared so far, and I think that some of what we discussed relates in the sense that, Sherry, you talked about leveraging the campaign in a way that will make it more sustaining. And in terms of leveraging, we were talking about leveraging existing initiatives. Rather than, creating something new for this campaign, are there ways to tie existing initiatives to the campaign for the purposes of, in a very creative way, starting a conversation? And so I was thinking about, Sherry, the documentary film that we co-produced with others, Music is Life, about music and dementia, with colleagues. We've just launched a documentary film called Dancer Not Dementia. It's only 20 minutes, and this was a collaboration with Canada's National Ballet School and Baycrest Health Sciences. It's all about challenging stigma and the power, in this case, the power of dance, but the arts more generally to support flourishing. And I just think it would be terrific to use these. And Let's Reimagine is another video that we have, and I'm sure there are others. So Margaret, as we were talking about these, came up with the idea of a film night, which would be amazing to showcase some of these and to organize, to bring, I love the idea of reaching out to partners that we haven't reached out to specifically, but why not invite them, to a film night or a film festival? I mean, if we have enough, films, we could have a number of events over the course of a whole week and engage, multiple, organizations. So I think that was, and then Kelsey had the idea to, which I really liked. She works in a long-term care home in Pembroke, and I think mentioned they have 250 staff members. So she was thinking to do something with the staff, engaging them in conversation about stigma and relational caring, and then creating, like, what's it called? A word cloud, that represents the various different conversations, and then sharing that with the broader community. So anyway, I think, Sian, those were the main ideas we talked about. Sian was note-taking for us. But then the other thing that I was thinking is that these could all then be showcased on the website. And so, and also if we could create like a calendar of events that we then put on the website so people can see what's happening all around the world. Maybe they want to travel to another city or another country because they're, oh my God, I really want to go to that film festival, or I really want to go to that event. So anyway, those were, I think, the main ideas we talked about.
That's great. And just, in fact, a coalition just got, I mean, there's so many lovely short films that members have created, people. I mean, I would love it if we could pull off some kind of film festival. It would be great. Okay, so so you're three, which groups have already spoken? Nayla, what were you?
Yeah, I was with Susan, Mel. Actually, maybe you could just all raise your hands.
Yeah, sorry, I just meant not, sorry, I was being more. Oh, okay, sorry, it turns out I can see it. So Robin's group has been represented as far as I know. Yes. Sherry's, Pia's, and then Kat, and then Nayla. So I guess everyone has spoken. Okay, so any other thoughts, sharings? Because I know everyone is on their lunch breaks or whatever, or if you're in the Eastern time zone. Anything else?
Just one other thing that we had brought up, Mary, was also reaching out into the, which we've been doing and continue to do that, to the medical community, to continue to bring out the relationships between doctors and clients, et cetera, which can be so challenging. Yeah.
Right. Robin, did you want to?
I just wanted to ask to whose attention we created a really lovely list of collaborative partners. Who should I be sending that to?
Just send it to the Reimagining Dementia email, and I'll see it, or I'll forward, whatever. So anybody who has anything else to send, just send it to the Reimagining Dementia at gmail.com. All righty, this is fun. It's inspiring. Okay, so we have another conversation on Thursday. Thank you. We will then, I think what we'll probably do is then kind of edit these two together and just create a kind so that others can see both who weren't able. I know there are people who are planning to come who weren't able to make it. So, and then kind of start the process of pulling together the ideas and seeing where we are. And then obviously there's much more to do, but I think we're off to a good start. I think this is great. So thank you all. And you all have a good rest of your week.
And we hope you feel better.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. Feel better.
Feel better. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Take care.
All right, great. All right, why don't we get started? As I said, a few people have had family emergencies, so we're unable to attend. And we also held another gathering on Tuesday, which was very lovely. I think it got us started in a Alrighty. Well, since there's relatively speaking, this is a relatively small group. Maybe each, why don't everyone introduce yourselves and give a sense of just what your the work you're doing and kind of anything else you want to share. So, Katie, why don't you start?
Sure. I'm Katie Wade, and I work for Front Porch, which is a senior living and services organization in California. And I get to work in a really cool division focused on external programming. A lot of it is virtual social connection programming through Well Connected and Social Call. We also do creative engagement work, which is kind of how I came to reimagining dementia. So lots of spaces we play in, and it's sunny outside today. That's what I'll have to report, which is 2 thumbs up.
Mindy. Oh, sorry. Got you mid. You're just putting something in your mouth.
I'm so very sorry that I'm eating. It was a very wild day, and I have 2 young children, so I'm just going to use that as an excuse.
It's okay. It's 6 o'clock. It is formally dinner hour. So
yes. So I'm Mindy Bolton. Prior to being a stay-at-home mom, which I've been doing for the last 4 years, I'm re-entering the working world. But prior to that, I was independent. I did independent contractor work as a creative engagement facilitator, and I would train people who worked in long-term care environments and do public speaking on the matter and facilitate groups of dementia-specific creative things of all kinds.
Wonderful. Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca. I'm a speech therapist, and I do home care with adults. And then I do dementia education advocacy on the side. I am trying to build a website related to it. And then I also sell baked goods in New York to raise funds to give to caregivers to tell me their stories. And then I put up on my website. I think, yeah.
Wonderful. Is it Tamara or people? I know they pronounce it differently.
Mine is Tamara. Yes, you got
Tamara.
it. Thank you.
Okay.
I am in Seattle and I work for Seattle Parks and Recreation. And part of my role is dementia-friendly recreation. And that's been true for about a year. And I've worked in the department with older adults for about 7 years. But before that, I was involved, I'll say on the outside, working at a small arts-based adult day program and developed some programming with an art museum. And so my work was at a time, most of my work has been at a time when there was a lot of energy with particular individuals or organizations. And this was maybe 10 years ago when we built a lot of cool partnerships, and I partnered with the city at that time. And what I'm really finding now is it's sort of starting all over again. So honestly, I almost didn't come to this meeting because I have such limited capacity and kind of need to focus it. And yet this is the work that, you know, we all did here, but because of attrition and just different things, it's really, the climate is very different. But what's not different is sort of the, you know, highlighting anti-stigma, strengths-based, you know, creative programming. But a lot of the people that were involved are not around any longer in various ways. And yet some people are, but I'm really focusing now on kind of back to basics with a couple of programs that are in sort of with more marginalized communities. But there's a whole bunch else trying to keep other balls in the air too.
Thank you. And thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I mean, thank you for coming. I very much realize sometimes I think maybe I won't come to these meetings.
Well, I actually don't want to lead with sort of the negative, I'm too busy, but I want to say it in that I feel like I should make clear that I don't think I can be in any kind of super involved role. And yet I'm kind of hoping that there might be something here that can relate to other programming I do as well.
Actually,
and tie it in.
We'll talk more about this, but one of the growing out of the conversation and on Tuesday, and something I've been thinking anyway, it's just my orientation. I think this only works if we can find ways for this to advance and highlight and expand and impact on current programming that you're doing or others are doing, where we are seriously not looking for this. And although I think it's going to be a creative challenge, because no matter what, the time issue becomes, it's invariably there. So I think it's a creative challenge to figure out, and I think we'll be working on that throughout the process of not making this just another thing on the to-do list. Because you're right, it will be the death knell. I honestly mean that. We might as well stop while we're ahead, because we don't have the capacity. None of us has that capacity at this point. And so I think I'm glad you added it, because it kind of gets the elephant in the room acknowledged, because everyone thinks it, whether they say it or not. So I would rather have it out in the open, and then we can figure out what to do with it, rather than, oh my God, it's there and whatever. So I'm really mean. Thank you for raising that. Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy D'Alessandro. I'm with Lynn Public Relations. I work in the senior living long-term care industry. Some of it is dementia-related memory care. Others, it's just, the CCRCs. But I have worked in the industry for a bit, and this was, as I told Mary, I'm not quite sure where I might fit in, but PR and storytelling is my background, and this is something that is of interest that I care about. So that's why I'm here.
Great. And last but not least, I'm sorry, if support group leader can you introduce yourself?
My name is Gail, and I'm a support group leader for the Chagrins Foundation, which is an autoimmune issue built around systemic issues relating to dry eye, dry mouth, and dry female body parts. The reason that I'm here is because I do creative programming as a volunteer for a company, Well Connected, I'm a facilitator for Well Connected out of San Francisco, California, and I teach quilting and programming to isolated communities. Some of my students are in nursing homes. They have no social life. I send the kits out to everybody, every class that I teach, and we go around the calendar. But my latest involvement is actually getting involved and taking a volunteer position with the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging. And I'm doing that so that I can understand how to put my effort into a creative programming capacity where arts, dementia, and isolation can come together to form successful conversations with seniors.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Dale, right?
Dale, G as in goat, A-Y.
Dale. Okay. Okay. Great. Well, thank you all. I wanted to, this wasn't on the original agenda, but I received this week. So I actually just thought it would be nice to share, because I think it's kind of maybe by way of saying a little bit about how we're thinking about this. But this is a some of you may have seen this. There was apparently, I believe he is a doctor in Texas. And one of our members sent it to me. And he apparently created a video in which he opened, I saw it, but he opened very dramatically with, there really are zombies out there, and then proceeds to talk about people living with dementia. And it was just kind of, I mean, even in the general ugliness of the way that dementia can be portrayed, it just seemed gratuitously cruel. And and I think our members, some of our members got together and created a very lovely response. Rebecca, were you part of that?
I organized the response.
Okay, so Rebecca organized. I did not totally realize
no.
that. But Rebecca organized the response, so it's even more relevant. So I'm going to share the post.
Oh, thanks.
Just give me a minute because I'm the world's worst sharer. What did I do?
Yeah, I mean, what I will say
Yeah,
is,
why
what
don't
I
you
was
say a
gonna say
little bit about it? Because
that-
actually you probably know more
well,
than I do.
So like the nice thing that came from it is, well, so I noticed that a lot of people in the community were really upset, obviously, about this reel where he says, like, we are a nation living with zombies and like they're all shrouded away from us. And a lot of people agreed in the comments. And so a lot of people were really upset. And so a group of us got together and we're talking about it and created this reel. But the other nice thing that happened is that there was talk about doing like a summit to discuss sort of the tragedy narrative. And that would be organized by Reverend Katie Norris from Creative Connections Dementia. So that's like a potential thing that could be good that is coming out of this. It's like pretty
that's great. Yeah. We would love to support it because it is a. So anyway, let me share the.
How do you, as somebody living with dementia, feel about being called a zombie?
I personally don't feel that way.
We are not zombies. This is the book where I make notes about the thousands of meaningful moments I've spent with people living with dementia at all stages. There's not a single zombie in here.
Last I checked, zombies don't dance, zombies don't make funny faces, zombies don't laugh. My mom's not a zombie, she's a human being.
Using the word zombie as a metaphor for people living with dementia results in discrimination, disregard, and neglect of those individuals. I think we can do better.
I kept a journal while taking care of my mom with Alzheimer's. Here's one of her quotes. Talk to me like you used to.
Not knowing our name or recognizing our face does not mean that our loved one doesn't know who we are anymore.
Emotional connection is preserved during dementia.
And just as you wouldn't categorize everyone from one profession or everyone from one background under the same label, the same goes for dementia. Everyone's different.
We aren't saying that dementia isn't hard to navigate, but we are saying that people living with dementia are not the problem. A society that treats them like zombies is.
In the emergency department, we see people at their worst, and it's hard sometimes for us to remember that that person may have a pretty decent quality of life. They may have quality of life that they would judge to be good.
Another problem with this zombie language is that it can keep caregivers stuck in their hopelessness and helplessness, and it can prevent them from knowing that in addition to grief, there can also be joy in dementia.
Brother. And actually, it's a wonderful setup because I mean, you know, I'm always inspired and try to use the inspiration to keep, you know, growing. But I think to me, one of the things that stood out was, and maybe it was you, Rebecca. Sorry, my short-term memory is going. I believe it was you, Rebecca, who said the problem is people living with dementia. It's a society that would relate to them as zombies. And in some sense, I think that's what is the inspiration for this Taking Us to the Streets campaign. So I think it's funny. Now I'm going to slightly contradict what I said to you, Tamara. On one hand, I think we can creatively come up, jointly, creatively, collectively come up with a way to create and develop projects, activities, whatever you want to call it, whatever word that doesn't put you into a panic, that are very much an extension of and part of what our organizations or institutions are doing. So on one hand, I firmly believe that. On the other hand, I do think this is also, we are going to ask our members to do something by way of kind of leveraging our collective impact, because that's what the coalition is all about. It's leveraging our collective resources, talents, enthusiasms, passions, experiences, successes, failures, and to impact on the broadest possible, on the broad conversation about dementia. Because as ugly as this zombie coming is, and it's just, again, it's just ugly and it's cruel. It is simply a kind of extreme extension of the general feeling about dementia. I mean, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's not as if, you know, even well-meaning people, I was thinking about this today. I mean, I have many really good friends who actually inadvertently or overtly kind of will sometimes express kind of just the, what's the use, they're already gone kind of, and they're not trying to be mean, they're not trying to be, you know, cruel. It's just, it is our culture. That's what we're facing. So that's why, and actually just you may have noticed this, and you are not as involved with this as I am, but originally when we talked about it, we were calling it the Taking It to the Streets campaign. Hey, Jill. But if for many reasons, including that it's going to make, again, it drives me mad. What's the word for for the initials you use, you know, like when an organization has, is it analog, anagram? Acronym. Okay. The acronym for Taking It to the Streets is just not, it turns out not to be a great acronym because it comes out to TITTS. And I just thought, why open I mean, it would be fun, but why open ourselves to? Now, I'm not sure so I'm kind of in my mind, but also honestly, I mean, that's kind of, I'm being somewhat funny, but still it wouldn't work. But honestly, the more we thought about it, it just seems like taking us to the streets is actually more actable and more powerful because it's not it's an us, and it's the collective us, and it's the us who have dementia. It's the us who care about this. It's the us who are doing the work. And I think in terms of kind of, and you know, I don't remember who's been in what gatherings where we've kind of begun talking about this, but I think it's our opportunity to say to the world and give to the world a new way, a new vision, a new approach, a much more positive, joyful, growth-filled way of approaching dementia, that it's letting people know, no, what we've been taught about dementia is simply wrong. And furthermore, it hurts everybody. It's not doing our broader society a great service to perpetuate this ad infinitum. So it is, but this is a campaign designed to reach the broadest population possible, to talk to strangers, to go to the streets, metaphorically or otherwise, although we really do want to go to the streets. But we recognize those streets might be libraries or other places or parks. But to speak to the folks who never, rarely, ever get spoken to about dementia, i.e. regular old people. So if there's a kind of a shaping I would give and a kind of basic criteria for what I think this is about, I think it's one, speaking to strangers. It's facing the community. It's, again, it's just involving people in fun, interactive, creative, inclusive activities of some kind or another in which they have the experience of dementia being, I would say positive, but they have the experience of that this is an ordinary part of life that you don't have to be afraid of. I'm not saying it's not challenging as that, video showed. Yeah, it's challenging. There's no doubt about it. But it also opens up infinite possibilities for living life in a whole host of creative ways for everyone involved. And it's funny, this whole week I've been speaking to, I've had a million conversations, not all related to this. It's really just meeting a lot of new folks, and invariably including, I attended a fairly, if you will, conservative conversation about dementia, not in the sense of politically, but it was mostly concerned about drug trials and treatments and things like that, which are obviously important. But even there, I was struck by people saying, hey, we've got to start making more good trouble, because we can't keep kind of participating in keeping dementia kind of secreted away in these specialty and often, too often in institutions. But that I think there is a growing kind of recognition that if we want to accomplish and if we want to really kind of hit of transforming the broader cultural take or conversation about dementia, we might need to be a bit more bold, a bit more big, and kind of, but creative and fun. I feel very strongly about that. This isn't a, but other than that, it's kind of facing the community, hopefully being, as I said, collaborative, creative, fun, inviting. It's not in that sense. I think it has as much to do with a kind of building community as it does, if you will, educating people. This isn't a lecture. We're not giving, we'll have some materials that we'll create, but it's really more to give people an experience and an experience of coming together and kind of immediately conveying we're not alone with dementia. Because as I've said, and all of you know, people, there's millions and millions and millions of people living and impacted by dementia. They're all around us. They sit next to us on the subway, or they're, our neighbors, and yet you wouldn't know it because there is this kind of cone of silence. And that's what we're trying to penetrate in very, hopefully impactful but simple ways. We're not looking to change people's minds this much. We're really inviting them to be part of this conversation. And that might be 5 minutes, that might be, maybe it's a lifetime. Maybe people do decide they want to do more, but it's also letting them know there's a community of support. If at any point they need or want to be, supported, then there is a very creative, innovative, compassionate grouping of people who are doing very good work that would change their relationship to dementia if they even knew about it. But so much of our work just goes unrecognized, and that's one of the things we also want to impact, is that how much is out there. And there really is a lot, but again, we don't often know that. But that's really what this is about. Beyond that, it's going to be up to us collectively and then individually within our organizations and whatever to figure out what that looks like. What could that be for some? It looks very different. In the conversation on Tuesday, people were talking about a lot of things. Like, for example, there's a lot of plays, movies, like there's a lot of creative work around dementia and including some of our members and others who are just have produced wonderful pieces. Could we curate a kind of festival, to actually show that allows, but do it in a way that, again, brings in people who ordinarily wouldn't be part of those kinds of conversations. And I think that there was also a real enthusiasm for, just to practically speaking, just to share our current thinking. Probably it's the case that we will do this in a week. We'll kick this off a week in September, because I believe it's World Alzheimer's Month, and it just seems like but use that week as kind of almost like a pilot. But there was a strong feeling that we wanted to take all of that and then have this be some kind of ongoing activity. We're not going to, in a way, we want it to continue in whatever ways we can ongoing, because I think, if you will, bringing out reimagining dementia, the activity, you know, we want to be doing that and doing it as boldly and as publicly as we can. But I think the week in September will be kind of the kickoff. And the other thing we spoke about is it would, and again, this is going to depend on what each of us has, but all of us have real networks. I mean, we're really urging that this be viewed as that we want to create collaborative partnerships. So I know people were talking about reaching out to cultural organizations that also work with people on various kinds of cognitive ability, you know, who are supporting, I mean, obviously dementia is one of those, but it's not the only one. Aging organizations, libraries, anyone who wants to be a part of it. Because again, the point of this is not to try to do everything alone. Maybe some of our members collaborate together. I mean, depending on geography and inclination. So it's really something we're going to have to create together. But again, going back to Tamara's point, and do it in a way that when all is said and done, like, I don't know, Rebecca, your work just reaches a much broader audience. We want to project our members and what we're doing. That's an important piece of this. I want people to know all of you much, much, much better. I mean, people need to know we and this broader array of creative innovators exists. Because again, ultimately, unless we can impact on this broader conversation, our work is just going to continue to be difficult. Because to your point, Tamara, it's never going to be, I just think we can't count exclusively on kind of top-down support to make sure that our programs continue or don't continue or whatever. But at some point, the community, the broader public is going to have to be involved and saying, hey, we need more, we do better. I mean, I know one of the women in the video says we can do better. We have to do better. Lives depend on it. We really do have to do better. So hopefully this is part of doing it better and having a lot of fun in the doing of it. So that's kind of what I have to say about it, really. So I think, you know, but let's open up if you have questions or thoughts. And then I think that it would be great if what we did, and well, in a way, we won't create a separate breakout room, but this will become a breakout room, which is what we did on Tuesday because we had more people. We created breakout rooms for people to just come together and begin to talk and begin to share thoughts and ideas and, you know, just to get a sense of where everyone was at and what was coming to mind and what were concerns and what did we think it had to look like, anything and everything. And this will be the first of many conversations. We're not trying to figure out everything now. It's really to try to get a sense of what's there and have members get to know each other and kind of what we are doing together and separately. So why don't we open it up though for the minute and kind of see people could continue sharing your thoughts and ideas and questions or whatever.
Sorry, I came on late. Hi, I know some of us and others for the first time. Hello. I'm in the Bay Area with Katie Wade. I'm part of Life Performance Coaching, which has brought out Mary to the Bay Area for a few years ago when she and her partner, collaborating with Dr. Susan Masad, did Joy of Dementia, You Gotta Be Kidding workshops. And we got involved in community organizing work around getting rid of the tragedy narrative and the stigma, and continue to do that here. So I was thinking about, I was recently in New York, actually just came home yesterday, helping a dear friend who's been ill and with cognitive neurological impairment and possibly also dementia. And then the day before I left, I have friends, because I'm a performance activist, and I have friends that were at the Port Authority bus terminal, which, you know, is this major bus terminal in Midtown Manhattan, where hundreds and thousands of commuters, even with COVID, you know, go through. And a performance activist who's involved with a project called Global Play Brigade had rented a storefront space there for the last month. I have a business card here somewhere. And what it was bringing out, you know, joy and loving, and, you know, it's like, show me your moves and I'll dance with you. And that was the theme. And then we got t-shirts, and we were just reaching out to commuters, most of whom didn't stop. I'm an old time grassroots street organizer, fundraiser. So I even got hoarse with the hour and a quarter I was out there. And of course, it brought back so many memories of my doing that work. But I was thinking, like, just, you know, bringing that out, engaging people as is possible. And they came over to see us. We gave them a hug. We gave each other hugs. Some danced, some moved, some just took a pose, and we imitated their pose. We gave them a piece of paper and a pen, and said, write down something that you're grateful for today. Whatever. It was so transformative. And all. So I've been starting to think, and it was just 2 days ago, like how we can organize something like that out here at a you know, a Saturday afternoon, or outside a market, or a farmer's market, or a street fair, or something. I'm looking at Carrie and I'm just nodding. Yeah, I just sort of haven't even had a chance to talk about it yet till now.
Thanks, Joe. Lee, do you want to, sorry, I just wanted to give Lee, do you want to briefly introduce yourself, and then hopefully in the conversation we've started talking about this Taking Us to the Streets campaign, which and kind of just beginning to brainstorm and play around with it. But why don't you briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, Mary and everyone. Sorry I'm late because it's 7:30 in the morning in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. So I was
thank you for
just
waking
right
up.
office.
Where are you?
Office.
She's in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
I'm from Kuala Lumpur. So let me introduce myself briefly. So my name is Wan Ling. Right, my surname is Lee. I'm a nurse as well as a lecturer in the University Malaya, located in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I get to know Mary through one of the project reimagining dementia in Malaysia, launching in Malaysia last year. Basically, my actual background is I'm actually coronary nursing. So somehow you've been wondering how from coronary nursing I sort of like coming into aging nursing. So I guess it's because I'm taking care of my mother. I'm a primary carer for her, and that sort of triggered my interest. I must say that I have nothing much to really share because it's kind of new to me. But I learned a lot. I've been going around and then listening and see what are the things that people have done so far. And I must say that, wow, Malaysia has a lot to catch up. But at least because we do, I believe there are some things that's going on, but we all tend to work in silos. But I get to know, okay, these are some of the activities that's happening around the communities. But what I hope to do here so far is that I just have a small internal grant. So I'm working with my colleague to look at how can we improve the standard of care, in aged care homes, because there's an issue in Malaysia. At the same time, We also look whether how can we sort of bring these creative-based interventions into the care of the older people. And this is an area that we are exploring for ideas, myself and my colleague.
Yeah.
So that's
Thank
as
you.
much. I got nothing exciting going on so far. So we are actually in the exploratory phase.
Well, I
Okay.
do know, if I don't know if people have seen it, but the Reimagining Dementia, our colleagues in Malaysia, created a wonderful video kind of their own using the video that the Let's Reimagine video that the coalition had originally, we launched it last year, and then they used the lyrics and the music to create their own, and it's wonderful. So I know you all have a lot of creativity. I trust, and I'm gonna probably set up a separate conversation with you all because of the time zones and things like that. But I know there's a lot of creativity there. I'm not worried at all that you all can't do some fun things at all. Anyway, others.
Okay, it's all right. That time is okay. 7 o'clock, we're already up and about. So I woke up at about 5:30. So I'm already on the road. 6 o'clock. It's just a traffic jam.
You're a much better person than I am, that's for sure. All right, others.
Okay, thanks.
So I can say something, thoughts that came to my mind when you were talking, Mary, partly thinking about that need for me, for there to be a real emphasis on joy and well, that's I think the one word I would say. That and then I was thinking about just yesterday, I met with someone who is responsible for a housing community that's independent living with, many, many languages. And he's new, and he was doing a survey, and pretty much, according to him, 99% of the people are dealing with memory loss. And there are many different languages. Most people do not have a lot of English. So I was thinking about that new relationship and how I can support them to offer opportunities for their residents, and also a Latinx group that I am kind of trying to rebuild. And so, and actually, honestly, I had Malaysia in my mind because I remembered watching the video, so aware that there are people across the world that are also a part of this. And something about dance popped into my head. I don't honestly know if it was just sort of that initial name, taking it to the streets and Doobie Brothers, or, circulating in my mind. But I was thinking about dance. And then Jill, when you were speaking about storefronts, I kind of went in some other directions, but dance is something that's common to lots of cultures. I mean, it's not an area that I live in comfortably, but having the cultures, and that dance is usually pretty joyful and fun, and it can look in all sorts of ways depending upon the kind of dance or the people involved. But that's very, ableist, and I think this needs to be more inclusive than people who are able to go literally to a street and start dancing. But in that little video, Rebecca, that you were involved in, the clip that Mary showed, just thinking, for me, it's also about those stories. And so people have, if they're not in a place where they're physically able to dance, some people do have that childhood memory of play and dance. And so then I started thinking about hopscotch games, which are, kind of around the world as well. And thinking that maybe there could be opportunity for something like, our mayor's all about revitalizing downtown. There's lots of storefronts available. maybe there could be something that's literally in streets. There's sort of that performance-based aspect of show me your moves, but maybe there's a cultural group who's doing their own dance and showing, it's the Filipino community in the Elder Filipino Community Center here that's having a good time dancing. And or maybe it's a story because it's the nurse who's working with people in a care facility, but she's that nurse who really spends time with people and writes their stories and writes those moments in her journal. It feels like there's lots of possibility for people to be involved in different ways. And I mean, people in this group and inclusive of a range of abilities and cultures. And
definitely. I like what you're saying. I mean, one of the conversations I had this week was with a couple various groups in the UK, including a group that was founded by people living with dementia. So we were just having fun talking about it. And we were also London, and they're going to the mayor's office. I mean, they're thinking big of London and bringing them into this whole thing. I'm not saying it has to happen everywhere, but I wanted to support what you were saying about this being presented as something that could give back to the entire community or the entire city. It's not I don't think we should think small necessarily. It'll turn out we can do what we can do. But I think we should dream big and at least have some fun doing that. And then we'll accomplish what we can accomplish. That's just life. But I love what you're saying. I think it's very helpful. Others?
Just kind of dovetailing on that, taking it to the streets. A couple of thoughts came to mind. One was about 10 years ago, Kelly Corrigan used to travel around into key cities, and it was just storytelling in that key city. And The Moth is another storyteller experience where they go to different cities and people, they sign up to tell their stories and they help them actually write their stories and then they present it. And then I thought one of you mentioned, the storefronts and the cities that are trying to rebuild downtown. And this is dreaming big and we don't have a budget for it, but I'm imagining like a big RV that's taking it to the streets and traveling town to town and gathering all of these stories, whether they're on paper or, a photographer just, catching people being silly themselves and just capturing their essence on film, on camera, in photos, and just being able to somehow package that up and share it with the world, and have there be a central place where, just some off the top brainstorming that came to mind.
I mean, one thing we were talking about on Tuesday was using our website to start, not only in a whole host of ways, and we could use other people's websites as well, but including beginning now even to begin to just share everything that everyone's, because my feeling, and this comes from, just, I think in a funny kind of way, the Taking Us to the Streets campaign is starting now. Because if you say you have a conversation, Tamara, with a colleague, well, already we're beginning to introduce this to people. So I don't think it's that somehow it just starts in September. I think the conversations that we're going to be having make as much of a difference, because at least it starts to plant a seed. I mean, that's important. How do we bring joy into everything? Because I agree with you. I think joy is, it is at the heart of this. So, we can use this and kind of play around with, but I think people are already going to be involved. I mean, I've been speaking to hundreds of people already. It's already out there. People are talking about it. And that's wonderful. I don't care what it ends up happening. I think it begins to introduce creativity. And one of the things we were talking about in another conversation today was like and again, it was a group in the UK, but I think it could happen anywhere, is that we also kind of create a proclamation that all these groups sign and sign on to, kind of making a statement about the importance of creativity and new lens. I mean, we'll have to make up the statement, but why taking us through the streets is so important. And kind of presenting that officially, that we really are making a broader demand that this be a more active and important and recognized and funded part of the dementia conversation. We're still kind of sidelined, and I think we have too much to give. So there's all kinds of ways we can, grab people's attention. Others.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a great book and general toolbox called Beautiful Trouble. I thought of it when you were talking about good trouble. I don't know if you've heard of it. By Andrew Boyd, and they've got a website for just more quickly glance at some ideas, but it's just really good ideas of creating that beautiful trouble, different ways of doing it. I was just thinking of like super low cost ideas, like make sure every little free library within 10 miles of you has a really high quality children's book about people living with dementia, and a really informative book that reduces stigma for adults too, because I think there's usually books for adults. I've thought about that. I don't know if they call him dude with a sign or guy with a sign in New York. He's always holding it's like, gosh, if I could get a hold of him, have him hold that some sort of sign of some sort of powerful statement, awakening people. And then I don't know, food trucks popped into my head. I don't know exactly what could be done. I just know there's a lot of joy in food. There's a lot of conversation around food, something involving food. Most of the time, whenever I want to collaborate with someone, I just ask. So I would imagine someone with a food truck would be okay with, I don't know, do people linger around the food trucks talking, if that could be a more meaningful thing, or just, that's just the beginning of a thought for me.
Yeah. I mean, thinking like in line with maybe what Tim was saying, like, and maybe a little bit what Joe was saying, you could, like, I think it'd be wonderful in like a town square, and I know not every community or town is conducive to this, but there are, most communities have kind of parks or town squares, like to do just a giant improvisational thing, like to just involve people in something like we have, it's just, that would be so much fun, and it would gain people's attention, and it doesn't cost a lot. It's not, but that would just be so impactful. And the other thing I was saying about Gail, and I'm not putting you on the spot at all, but that you do quilting reminded me, like, I remember going to the AIDS quilt, like I'm that old. And that was so incredibly impactful. I mean, I don't know if people saw it or remember it, but it spread out over the Lincoln, that entire mall. And so I was thinking, maybe there's something like that you could do, involve people in creating quilt squares, or, but it's something that kind of it's joyous, but it's also, an opening for a conversation. Others.
I am thinking about annually we run a gallery takeover program. So one of the programs I oversee is Ruth's Table, which is a gallery and making space in San Francisco. And the gallery takeover program at the end of the year is a community-based art exhibit. So all year we make art around particular themes, usually from 25 different organizations / communities that submit pieces of different mediums around this theme. And so I am thinking about, we have a meeting with Elder Ashram coming up soon, which is a local senior living residence in Oakland that's incredible and very creative forward, about gallery takeover and what they'd like to do to contribute. And so now I'm toying with the idea of Trash Mashup is an organization that one of my coworkers founded that uses hard to recycle or impossible to recycle materials to create parade costumes. So think like boas made out of trash bags, cut into strips, that kind of thing, shields made out of big pieces of plastic. So I'm thinking potentially a workshop in the Trash Mashup way, where we create costuming from those materials. And then Elder Ashram lives just down the street from me, and it's a street that has like a little downtown area. So some restaurants, the post office, banks, etc. I'm thinking about taking it down, like wearing the costumes and some signs and taking it down the street would be kind of a quick walk.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Great.
To see if all these people want to do all these things, but that's what we're considering.
Anyone who has not spoken? Rebecca, have you? I mean, I'm not putting it, if you don't want to, fine, but I think you're the only one who actually hasn't formally.
Yeah,
So what's
like
this making you think about?
yeah, I mean, I actually think I really like the idea of a joint art project where I like, whether it's a quilt or something else, where there's like a physical representation that can go in a space that people living with dementia and their care partners and just the people who care about them could create. So I was trying to think about other options besides a quilt, although I do like also the idea of a quilt. Yeah, but I'm just still thinking, sorry.
No, it's okay. We have some time. But part of this is actually the value of this conversation as well. And I didn't say this at the beginning, is, this video and the one on Tuesday are going to be edited together, and then we'll share it with the entire membership. And amongst other things, one of the reasons this is so helpful is because it's just beginning to generate ideas so that other people can hear and say, oh, yeah. Okay, so this is also very giving to the rest of the coalition because it's just beginning to generate possibilities.
I do think the other thought that I've had, and I just haven't really thought of how to articulate it, but I will try, is, the idea that taking it to the streets would really mean ultimately we want different spaces, not just community spaces, but like normal, just like everyday things like restaurants and bakeries. We want those to be accessible and comfortable for everyone, and to include people who are living with dementia and their care partners in those spaces.
Sure.
And so I've just been trying to think about that. My like, one of my goals is to have a space like that one day. And I've just been wondering if maybe there's a way that we can select a neighborhood in some location that it would work for, and see if there could be even just like one day where there's education offered and stores say like, this is a safe space today, and then hopefully they can carry that through moving forward for longer than just that day. I'm not sure if I articulated that well, but I tried.
I agree. Well, one of the things we're playing with that this made me think about is, the coalition will create some basic materials. Just to, kind of provide to people. But, I was thinking, even if like we created small posters or stickers that said, we're reimagining dementia, how about you? I don't know. I just totally made that up. But that even if those were put around the neighborhood and stores, that would have an impact. People would give it, oh, reimagining dementia. Like, I can't tell you, just to even utter the words reimagining dementia or the joy of dementia or whatever, it's people go, it catches their eye because it's just not, the words don't go together. Maybe they do for us, but for the general population, it's like, oh, I didn't even know that was possible. You can actually have joy and dementia. Wow. And then, and maybe we provide a way for them to be in touch, but it's also, I agree with you. It's like low touch, high touch. There's a lot of ways to just kind of create a whole environment. Like I shared the story. I was in Savannah, Georgia last year, and it was over Halloween. So I went walking in the city. It's a beautiful city. And, but I began to notice that there were a lot of dogs dressed up in costumes. And it turns out they do I think they call it Barkoween or something like that. But literally throughout the city, there were these stations that businesses, everybody put out with treats for dogs. And there were posters and there were things all over the city. So it just created this whole really wonderful, I'm not a big dog lover, but I thought, wow, that's kind of fun. like even if you didn't, you were just part of something and everyone was a part of it. It wasn't a big deal. I think they had a parade, but something like that, I think that's you know what I mean? Like that just gives people a sense of, oh, there's something going on here. Now, maybe they want to check it out, maybe they don't, but there's something going on that sounds fun or intriguing or whatever. So, well, these are wonderful thoughts. I think what I'm going to do, since we're a relatively small group and it's already 7, I think we will end it here. I think because there will be more conversations, and I'm going to give people a chance to eat and relax and for the rest of the evening, depending on where you are, or the rest of the morning in some cases. But thank you all so much. And obviously there'll be much more happening, but I really appreciate, and there's some wonderful, wonderful ideas. So we'll continue to share them and continue this conversation. Yeah, Tamara.
Just one more thing. Well, I could say many more things, but I'll try not to. You just said something that is really making me pause, and that is that you know, I'm reimagining dementia. How are you? And this conversation started with this other thing, taking it to the streets, that doesn't have a great acronym. And as you said, these conversations have already started. They are starting. We're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And yet we're kind of in this different thing. And I'm just thinking about going back to what this organization is called, which gets away maybe from, you know, a unified thing, but maybe allows for the message to remain kind of strong and clear, rather than, oh, there's a tangent over here. This group, I thought they were called Reimagine, but now they're doing this thing called Taking It to the Streets. Like perhaps keeping it simple and having that, you know, kind of that sticker message button thing that could be applied to all sorts of activities in all sorts of ways. But I still do like the idea, and I mean, the thing is, there's no shortage of ideas. Another project that I'm trying to work on involves some recycled materials, and you know, I work for the Parks and Recreation Department, so I'm picturing putting these. Well, anyway, I won't get into it, but coming from people's stories and also resulting in a visual thing that can have an impact in the community because other people see it. So all of that seems good, but I'm just thinking, since we don't have the great acronym, like it would be great if, you know, JOY had some letters that worked or something, but I haven't thought of them.
Agreed completely. Sorry, I think that the Taking Us to the Streets is kind of our internal, just so it's an easy way to say we have this campaign coming up. I don't think out there we'll say that, because hopefully we'll already be there. And I agree with you. It will have a kind of joy reimagining dementia thematic. I agree with you completely that it's got to be a sharp, just short, to the point, kind of mildly, gently provocative message, so that people, it just grabs people immediately. So I think what you're saying is very helpful. And I think that is the spirit. I mean, we're going to start developing CUP, and we'll get input from folks. So this, again, we aren't even close to doing that yet, but yes, your point is well taken. Anything else before we go? All right, we'll have a lovely, oh, sorry, Jill.
Oh, I was thinking so. Yeah, I was looking for my button.
Okay.
But when you said that about, you know, joy and not you know, taking us to the streets, people aren't going to say, I'm going to this event, so I don't know. I just thought of candy bars, you know, not Milky Way, but I was thinking of M&Ms, like when you said, you know, joy, like joy of dementia, that's Jod. It's kind of like God. No, I don't think so, that one. But I was just starting to play around with, you know, maybe there is something we could collectively, you know, think about. And then you know, we could have little, you know, we could distribute little.
No, and
Jellies or something.
we'll keep generating for a while. And then at some point, you're right. Then you have to move to, okay, here's what's going to begin to happen. But we're not there yet. I think we can keep playing with it and involving, and there's many more people to reach and blah, blah, blah. But thank you all very much. This was fun and good to see you all. And we will continue the conversation. Have a
Thank
good rest of
you.
the
Thanks,
day.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye.